setting up here for a fifth straight day of gains, Matt, on the S&P 500, a weekly gain to boot. But the big story has really been that rotation into some of those cyclical and small cap names.
Yeah, and that's a story I've been hearing about for a few weeks now. I guess the setup is right for a rotation into small caps. And you also didn't really get like a holy camole earnings report from NVIDIA. I guess it was better than a stick in the eye, but it wasn't the typical beat and raise that you saw NVIDIA do the last few quarters. And maybe it took a little wind out of the sail of the mega cap tech stocks, or gave people permission to continue rotating into the Russell.
Yeah, the big tech stocks really dragging today. NASDAQ 100 still probably going to finish in positive territory, but some of those individual names just can't compare today to the small caps, Russell 2000 and the Dow.
Yeah, although the Mag 7 did finish the week up about 1.3%. I feel like another big story of the week was Bitcoin. We're all watching for that $100,000 level. We haven't quite gotten there yet. We're just talking with a technical analyst, and he says technical analysis is the only way that you can explain the momentum in Bitcoin prices, because fundamentally the story hasn't really changed all that much.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, as we get the closing bells in New York, the clapping, of course, starts. And a lot of reasons to clap. The gains may look modest on the screen on the day, but you add them all up here, and you're looking at a pretty strong week for most of the major indices. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is going to close out the day higher by more than 400 points, or roughly about 1% on the day. The S&P 500 adding about 0.3%, up about 20 points, but still below that 6,000 level where it's going to settle in. The NASDAQ Composite adding about 0.2% gain on the day. But the star of the show, again, we have to go back to those small caps. A 1.8% gain on the Russell 2000, a 1.7% gain on the S&P 400 mid caps, and a 1.1% gain on Dow Transports.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a little bit of a barbell situation, if I can use that term, because the Dow, although the kids don't really talk about it anymore, is much bigger cap stocks, right? And the Dow is up 1 full percent as the S&P underperforms, as the NASDAQ underperforms. So it's the Dow and the Russell that are the big winners in terms of the major U.S. averages.
Yeah, very well said. Within the S&P 500 today, you have 381 gainers versus 118 decliners. So let's take a look at the IMAP. That big red slice is tech, and that group is down about a fifth of 1%. Utilities and communication services also lower, and so that is why the S&P 500 has not done as well. The gainers are some of those cyclicals that we've been talking about. Industrials up 1.4%. Consumer discretionary gaining 1.2%. Financials up 1.1%. As well.
In terms of the gainers, there are a lot of them, but they're relatively small stocks. Again, these are not the big names that you're used to hearing every day, which maybe is a bit of a relief for those of you here sick of hearing about NVIDIA every day. Copart is a company that I think is really interesting. They auction off damaged cars for insurance companies. I think it closed up 10% or more, its biggest gain since March. They reported fiscal first quarter revenue that rose 12% from the year ago period and beat estimates. So people like Copart today, people like Helen of Troy, those shares climbing after they agreed to buy a nail care company called Olive and June. Haven't heard of it, but it's a $240 million deal. Apparently, it includes a $15 million earnout subject to performance over a few years, 2 or I think 3 years. So Helen of Troy shares climbing as well. Moderna is a company that we all heard of, obviously going through the pandemic. mRNA is the ticker there. Those shares up after the company said that RFK Jr.'s nomination to the Department of Health and Human Services is unlikely to mean removal of vaccines. Now, I guess they didn't need to come out and say that for us to believe it. I've heard that from a number of vaccine experts on this program over the past couple of days. But shareholders seem to be at least a little bit supported by those comments from the company directly. And then I threw in one just for my namesake, Matthews International.
That's why you picked it?
The smallest company on the list. I thought it was interesting because they make caskets, memorials, and cremation equipment.
Wow.
That's a demographics play, right? The shares rocketed today. They were up like 20%. 21%. Cremation equipment, I guess, is a hot seller right now. Fourth quarter sales beat Wall Street's expectations.
Okay, well, if you haven't heard of all of the companies that Matt picked for his gainers, you've most likely heard about the companies that were the decliners today. I'm looking at NVIDIA. It's actually about flat on the week, but it did close lower, over 3% today. This, of course, after it's already up 186% year to date. Speaking after the release of quarterly results, Chief Executive Officer Jensen Huang said that NVIDIA's highly anticipated Blackwell products will ship this quarter amid very strong demand, but the production and engineering costs of the chips will weigh on profit margins. I'm also looking at Intuit. This is a tax software company. They gave a second quarter forecast for adjusted earnings that came in weaker than expected. They see EPS $2.55 to $2.61, estimates of $3.23 per share. Barclays said they didn't see much in the results to change the investment story, but they still lowered their price target on this stock to $775 from $800, and that stock closing down almost 6%. And then another mega cap tech stock, Google, the third straight day of declines, closing now at the lowest level since October 24th. The news today coming that Alphabet risks a formal UK investigation over their dominance of web browsers on mobile phones. The UK regulator said in a statement on its interim findings that Google and also Apple can manipulate consumer choices to make their browsers, Safari and Chrome, the clearest or easing option. I picked Google as a decliner because Apple actually finished in the green today.
Good. I'm glad you were able to pivot. Carol would not have been able to juggle that, Emily. You now have her job. All right, let's talk a little yields here. Really interesting story this week in yields. Let's start with the 2-year yield, because for 5 straight weeks now, we have seen that yield go up. Remember, we talk about September, what it was. We were below something like 3.5%. We're now right around that 4.4% level, up about 7 basis points on a weekly basis. But the rest of the curve, it's really sort of a mixed bag. We saw a drop in yields on a weekly basis on both your 10 and 30-year yield. But that's been the seesaw, back and forth on a week-to-week basis. A lot of people really are not quite sure exactly what the next step is. But of course, the most sensitive part of the curve to any changes by the Fed is that 2-year, and that is decidedly to the upside, something to keep an eye on here as we close out the week. Matt.
Has everyone seen the Jaguar marketing campaign for their rebranding? Possibly the worst marketing campaign I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah,
Here
I love it.
We have...
Where's the car?
Yeah.
There's no car in this video. I guess they're trying to project kind of a new age, maybe a woke kind of message.
This is woke?
This is woke? What are you talking about?
Or maybe just tastelessness. I don't
know. This is just confusing.
What it is. But they have 17 million followers on Instagram. And last I checked, there were like 35,000 comments, none of them positive about this. Here's the logo. Look at that. The capital G and the capital U in the middle, but nothing else.
Yeah, woke.
I don't know what they're selling.
It's totally woke.
I don't know what they're selling.
I don't know what they're selling. I mean, maybe it's not woke. I don't know what they're trying to say with this.
Maybe it's just a commercial.
I just want to say Don Draper, the fictional Don Draper, is rolling in his grave. If you guys remember that Mad Men episode where he did the Jaguar ad. I don't know why they didn't just pull from Don Draper.
Oh my God, that would have been the best way to do it. I totally agree. The other story that we're keeping an eye on is McDonald's. You know those value meals that have been around since 2018, very popular. They're changing that up, and they're now creating this McValue line as well, which includes a $5 meal deal and a buy one, add one for $1 offer. And this is because the old value meal is no longer feasible because of inflation.
Wait, so they're lowering prices?
No, they're not lowering prices. They're no longer offering the value meal prices, which were low prices, and they're now offering something else called the McValue.
So this is a value meal, but not the value meal.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
Value 2.0.
Interesting. Okay. You're a McDonald's person, Scarlett,
I am. I often go.
Yeah.
And
really?
Yeah, but I regret it the minute I go, but then, well, that's not true. I'm enjoying every minute of it until I'm done with the French fries. Then I regret it.
You didn't know Scarlett was like a fast food junkie? She just walks around. She just walks around the office here with a Big Mac.
The biggest value to me is going to be not having a heart attack in the next couple of decades because I've avoided McDonald's.
Oh, I don't know.
Emily, are you a McDonald's fan?
Yeah, I like the French fries. I'm staying away from the Quarter Pounders for a little bit, but
fair enough.
Maybe I'll go back to them.
Wait, what do you get? If you get the Quarter Pounders, what do they have?
E. coli.
E. coli. Yeah. I guess that was the onions.
I think it's the lettuce, right? Or the onions? Okay.
Okay. All right.